So let's start and tell me a little bit about your business. What you do, where you're at, where you want to go. Give me the down low.
Well, down low. Well, I am self-taught Amazon seller. I
Mm-hmm.
started selling Amazon private label, white labeling products. All of the courses on teaching you how to search for the right product and then brand it yourself. And I sold multiple products on Amazon, but kept running into the same struggles of price competition. Once you found the hot seller, it's really not a market of making a brand for yourself. I found from my personal experience, it's more of like you are in the market business of product searching.
Mm-hmm.
You're constantly trying to find a product that is positioned well, that will have ride a wave. If you're not making something super spectacular or a huge point of difference. I mean, everyone's doing the same thing. I was in the baby niche, which was a very good niche to begin with, but then as soon as you found a product, the price war began as soon as everybody else found their manufacturer from China and did the same thing. So, you're spending a lot in advertising if you're not ranked. So anyways, long story short, it just became the fees and everything became so excessive on Amazon for long-term storage if you weren't moving your product, and they would change the game with reviews here and there. So I wanted to continue with a physical product, but I wanted to learn how to do it off of Amazon, which I ended up in the Start and Scale program, because whether they teach, I'm not there yet, whether they teach to sell on Amazon or not, but I was more interested in let me build up my brand off of it so I'm not self-reliant on Amazon anymore.
Gotcha. And
So
and
I
what
liquidated.
and what's your brand going to be? Just to kind of get into that.
Right. So transitioning, the reason why I prefaced with that is that I wanted to find a product that was consumable,
Mm-hmm.
that was harder to duplicate, the process of creating it. So I'm in the travel coffee creamer. So my first product will be a keto-based coffee creamer, which is travel friendly.
Okay.
Uh,
Excellent.
in hopes that I will continue. Like, I've thought about coffee, I've thought about all the different ways to branch, but I want to continue making creamer at this point. Perhaps I will, do affiliates for coffee or something like that. But I think I've built this relationship with my manufacturer. We're perfecting the creamer. I want to continue to niche down in that vein.
Okay, cool. So tell me a little bit
Tra-
about where you're at right now and where you're running into issues, and I guess if you're seeing any big problems right now, because what we want to get to is like, where are you going to get to and what is that going to look like, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
where do you want to get to, and what then we can talk maybe a little bit about the problems that you're having.
yeah.
Yeah.
I want to be the biggest, baddest online coffee creamer business out there, but
Okay.
my problems are with the formulation with my manufacturer, which I'm dealing with. It's been over a year, but right now I'm stuck with the branding. Like, which vein do I really need to focus on? Do I need to double down on a very specific niche, like we spoke briefly about travel? Or do I need it to be healthy, cleaner coffee creamer and open up my horizons? Does it need to be keto? Like, I'm kind of shying away from the keto um, niche. So I like, where do I position myself? Where am I going? Where's the gold for this product? Where am I going to be able to grow and scale and become you know, the full potential of the business and not sell myself. Like, I keep finding, even with my name, I can't decide on a name because I feel that it's positioning me, like I'm getting stuck on where do I belong.
Okay, well, and let's just kind of fast forward to a full year from now, and it's 365 days. Uh, you push this big red magic button, and you have the best year of your business's life, and it all works out. Where are you? Let's start with that.
Mm. It's hard to even imagine because there's been so much uh, work with no no movement so
Well, I
far.
mean, what happens? Like the formulation
Years
comes
now.
through in like a month, and they can start manufacturing and scaling up, and then you get the right influencer on board, and suddenly you pop, and then someone does a dance with your coffee, and you're on Ellen. Like I don't know. Tell me what's going on. Like
That would be great.
what?
Like where I'm like netting, you know, yeah, that we have a solid foundation, that sales are coming in. I would love to be in a year from now, profiting, 20 grand a month. I don't know.
Okay.
That's
So
big. That would be big for me. So,
okay, and your manufacturer can handle that, right?
well,
Once you get formulation down.
yeah. Well, once we get formulation done, they're going to be the small batch, and they already have. I found them the reverse way. I found them through the manufacturer that didn't do formulating. So they referred me to the formulator. Then I'll go back to the manufacturer that can support that.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of times the top down is one of the best ways to work it, right? Where it's like you don't ask a manager for permission, you go to the owner, and then the owner tells the manager that you're doing the thing, right?
Yeah.
So
And that's how it works. Yeah.
awesome. All right, so 20 grand a month. I'm going to go a little bit of a different angle here on the business, and I'm going to ask you, aside from the fact that you're trying to find a niche that's going to hit, why do you care about coffee creamer? Why do you give a shit that it's keto friendly? Like, what is it about that in particular that you stuck onto? And give me some background behind that.
Well, I'm a traveler. I've spent the last 4 or 5 years of my life traveling all over the world. And even when I'm here I live in Florida. When I'm here locally, I'm renting my house out on Airbnb. So I'm in and out of the house. And I was carrying a whole bag. It's solving a problem. I was carrying a whole bag just for my coffee. It's so important. I call it sacred time, my coffee time in the morning to get my day started. And so I liked my coffee a certain way, and I'm willing to be the bag lady carrying one bag just for my one cup of morning coffee.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to make a product that fit my needs, but then I realized that there was the potential for it to fill a place in the market when I started to think about it deeper. So I like coffee. It's my one, no matter where I am in the world, it's my one staple a day, that I try to do. And it's always the creamer. I have a lot of allergies and food sensitivities. And so being able to enjoy the same lifestyle without sacrificing what I really like and what I really want, going to, meet a friend for coffee, but not being able to participate in the coffee because they didn't have a non-dairy, things are changing now, but a non-dairy, milk alternative. So it was developed out of my own selfish needs and wants, but then realizing that this is, the more people I talk to, they're like, hey, that sounds interesting. What, I think I'd like to try that. Or, I'm doing the same thing and I can't stand all the products that are on my counter in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I like it because, I think about it back when, when I was a kid, my dad didn't put milk in his coffee. My dad had Coffee Mate, right? And he would buy tubs of Coffee Mate. Right. And it was just like, it was that thing that was always in the house. And, I know that it like lights on fire and it's like super bad for you. And I don't even know how they turn like fat into powder, but it, I don't know what that process is, but I know that it's still huge. And when it became flavored and then when it became in the liquid form and, it's a big space that I think when you look at, so your goal is to get to 20,000 a month by the end of this year, right? And you said that your big time goal is to basically like be the next Coffee Mate, but like maybe the Whole Foods top end niche market Coffee Mate, that you'd be happy with a brand that does that, right? Yeah. So then what I think, if we talk about the naming of your brand, you kind of came up with a few different things that, you're solving your problem, but you're solving a bunch of your problems. You're not just solving the fact that you're a traveler, right? You're also solving the fact that you have food insensitivities, right? And that one's like a bigger one, I think. That one's we're travelers. I'm in Lisbon right now. You spent the last 4 or 5 years traveling. I spent it in Colombia and Mexico and Nicaragua, and but we're not the majority, right?
That's what I'm trying to separate myself from.
So the majority of people get bloated when they eat a certain thing, or they break out when they consume a certain thing, or they have to inform the airline they can't get on board if there's going to be nuts around, or they are gluten intolerant, or right. And there's like, food insensitivity has become one of the overarching themes of modern society, right? And I think that if you're really going to talk about a strong why, right, and that comes from this guy Simon Sinek, and he talks about starting with why. You know who he is?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So have you seen his TED talk where he talks about Apple and like the golden circles and all that kind of stuff? Okay, awesome. Then we're on the same path, right? Yeah. Your why needs to be something that will scale you up to be that big, right? Now, there's a difference between what you launch through and then what you scale to, right? Yeah. Okay. There's a big difference between the fact that Ferrari started by making unique, custom, bespoke cars, and now they sell keychains and leather jackets, right? Like that was a long transition, but you can compact that transition into, all right, maybe you start with a name that can be kind of universal, right? Like a Coffee Mate, right? Maybe Coffee Clean, or coffee, something like that. I mean, you want to think of it like it's your coffee buddy, right? Like something like around that area where they know. And then you're touting these certain things, but maybe what happens to get you the traction is the fact that like there's a lot of aspiration behind being a traveler, right? There's a lot of people that the travel bloggers, the ones who take the picture in Bali on the swing with their perfect tan and the rain is falling on their face and all that kind of stuff. Like, I mean, you know how those pictures are made, but the housewife in Iowa is looking at that and going, oh my God, one day I would love to, right? And so if you were to start with that idea of, okay, maybe that's where my influencers are at, right? Maybe these are the people that are going to become huge fans, and these are the people that they're going to give their people a discount code so that they can come to the online store and buy it. And then there's, if we talk about the starting is different than the scaling, right? Because the scaling is, if you're going to be head-to-head competitor, you have to have store distribution. People buy their stuff in a store, right? Especially food-based products. And you want it to be a consumable. It would be nice if you get a percentage that, I don't know any big food brands except for there were these cupcakes that made it really big. They're like cupcakes in a jar, and they were on Shark Tank. And they got huge because they were very easily mailable, but they're also ridiculously expensive, and they're $12 a cupcake or something stupid, right? So what you want to get to is the point where you get to create such a strong brand love for the people that are buying, that then you can go into, there's a very defined path for a lot of food brands that go into, say, the Whole Foods, right? And then beyond the Whole Foods, they would be going into the, I don't know, what do you have, Kroger's and Piggly Wiggly's, and I don't know what you have in the States, but in Canada we got Sobeys and Safeway, and in Mexico they've got they've got their chains, and in Colombia they've got the Éxito, and so they've got Jumbo here in Europe, so there's these brands that are all over the place, right? But the path to that, so that one day I'll be able to go into a grocery store in Azerbaijan and be like, oh, there's her stuff, I like that. There's a defined path to that, right? And where you want to start with is being able to prove that you can sell sell through a cycle quickly. And that's going to come from having some brand loyalty, right? Or from having a very interesting marketing campaign once you get into your test store. So, I was working with a frozen food startup, and they started at a small store that was not a Whole Foods, and they had a campaign around getting all of the stuff sold out of that one store. So they did geo-targeted marketing around to their niche audience to get people to come in and buy and try out of that one store. They then took those results to Whole Foods and said, hey, can we have a try in one of your stores? Whole Foods said, sure, looks like it. Because realistically, these stores are in the business of selling space, right? They want highly profitable space, right?
Right.
So if you can then show them in a Whole Foods situation where, you know, you do the exact same thing and you just put it on a repeat where you get to geo-target and they get to see, you know, I mean, if you can be at 100,000 followers and be doing your $20,000 a month before you even consider going into a store, you're going to be at a lot stronger position, right? Because then you get to do the, you know, the small target marketing or small target market where it's like an individual store, then maybe you go regional, at which point you're going to have, you know, there's only so much advertising you can do. You want to just increase your brand recognition, and at that point it's a totally different game, right? But at that point you also may be able to do things like a Costco deal, right? And then with the Costco deal, well, the Costco deal can potentially help you with their international, because a lot of Costco products will go international. And at that point, once you've broken those international barriers, you can start to talk about distribution through the other major chains, right? So there's like your path. That's probably your big picture path, right? Okay. And then we got to bring it back into, well, what happens now? Right. Does that sound like a path that you would like to take?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. Because the thing is, we're not reinventing the wheel. This is something that happens all the time with different brands, right? They make it happen. It happens with micro brands, that the micro brand, you know, takes off, it gets the space, it finds the distributorship, and, you know, then you can potentially launch that into a line, right? Where maybe you do get the flavors in, and maybe you go from the liquid form to the powder form, and maybe I don't know. I mean, this is where you're playing inside of the coffee creamer space, right? But you can start on Instagram.
Okay.
Right? So, starting on Instagram, what that looks like is, well, first of all, you need a name, right? Yeah. So you have to brainstorm a name, but here's the thing: don't brainstorm a name around one of the problems or any of the problems you're solving, right? Coca-Cola is, you're like, what? What is that, right? But it's Pepsi, really? Okay, cool. McDonald's is named after a pair of brothers, right? Nestle, right? These are brands that there's a difference. I'm looking right now. I have a Brita water bottle, right? I don't think of it as a clean water filter company. Right? I think of it, Brita is a clean, a water cleaning company, right? So you don't have to have a direct relation to what you're doing. And I know that I know the reason I'm bringing this up in particular is because you were throwing out some names where it was like nomads and you were trying to, right? And you were trying to have the name that kind of matched that. And I'd actually forgotten that we talked before. Well, it just like the chatting back and the typing back and forth a little bit, right? But I didn't realize that was you. But yeah, now that we're getting into it, it's like, okay, well, what's the name of a brand? My brand is FIND LVRG, right? Because I wanted something that was super simple that people could understand what it is, because it's a really esoteric, like out there woo-woo type thing. So it's better for them to be able to understand. But even then, they look at the way it's spelled and like, I don't know how to pronounce that. So now I have to go and do like an animation where it's like the vowels disappear, right? But in your case, don't worry about it too much. Right? There might be, it might be Greta coffee, or you might choose a little name like Coffee Buddy, or something that is, I don't know, Coffee Amigo, or Coffee Cuate. Like in Mexico, if you're like a really good buddy, you're like a cuate, right? So maybe you find like different name that is something that has a really cool ring to it, and everyone's gonna be able to just roll it off the tongue. And that's the thing, right? Maybe you come up with a name like Persephone, and it's just, it is what it is, right? It has nothing to do with anything, and that's just it, right? But don't worry about it too much. Just play with the idea that people will accept it for what it is once they know what it is, right? Does that make sense?
Right.
So it's pretty simple that you're going to have like videos that shows the top of the coffee and the stuff going in, and then all of a sudden it's creamy, and then it's like keto, right? Or whatever, right? And then you can choose your influencers based on, you know, what are their beliefs. So maybe your first influencers are vegan and keto, and, you know, you go for these extreme ones where it's like, you know, the guy's on basically a meat only diet, or they're doing the one meal a day, or they're doing, and then you start to capture, each of these are a market, right? So the intermittent fasting crew that only eat during a 4-hour period, well, if your thing is a 0-calorie, keto-friendly something, maybe it fits into that, right? I don't know, right? Maybe you can find maybe if it actually is like a 0-calorie, then it could potentially, because I know, for example, I can have a little coffee here, and I can I can have that coffee with a little bit of one of those little Splenda tabs, right? And that still keeps me in, inside of my ketosis. Is not activating my insulin, right? If yours fits that, then maybe you can start to attract some of those influencers, right? If you are all about if it is keto friendly, you can start to attract some of those. If you have people that are, like well-renowned vegans, then you can reach out to those, and you can hit the vegan community, and you've got the interesting intersection where you can be hitting people that oh, I hate vegans, oh, I am a vegan, and they're both going to use your product.
Right. And that's the confusion that it's called. Like, I'm like trying to follow the modules, like have a descriptive names, name what it is that you're selling, and, pick a market that, and it's kind of, I'm like, I feel like I'm backing myself into a limited space, because all the feedback that I keep getting is don't limit yourself. And it's like super confusing for me, like to just, especially because I have tons of ideas, and I'm like, I don't know which one to pick, take myself out of it.
Well, look, there's a saying that you can't do everything, but you can do anything. So the way to get everything done is do one thing after another. Right? Now, if the thing is that, if you look at and Greta's course is fantastic, right? She's built multi-million-dollar businesses off of it. If you look at her Skinny Me Tea, it's, brilliant what she did with it, very descriptive, but you're not looking to build a $5 million business, you're looking to build a $500 million business, right? You're not looking to have an Instagram business, you're looking to have I want to be in every store in the world, and I want to be the solution to people who think Coffee Mate is disgusting and can't drink milk, right? So when you go through a course like this, there's a ton of different things that you can do, right? But you have to think of, does this model actually fit my model, right? So it's like, I look at it like nobody's going to be able to give me every answer. Nothing is 100% sacred, right? I have to pick and choose the pieces that are going to work for me. That make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
So when you're going through and you're listening to a Gary Vaynerchuk talk, or you're listening to a Seth Godin talk, or you're listening to a Simon Sinek talk, or you're listening to, Neil Patel, or you're listening to Tony Robbins, and they're all talking about marketing, and they're all saying different things. They are all saying different things, and they're all actually right.
Right.
Right? None of them are lying. They're all saying the truth, but, what is the truth for your brand? Right? That's what you have to figure out, is what is the truth for your brand. And when we come back to today and the next few months, you really have to focus on, all right, we got to get this formulation done, right? Because you don't have a brand until your formulation is done. It just doesn't exist, right? And so getting that formulation done, that's a thing you have to push on, and we can go into that a little deeper if you feel that you're having some potential resistance, or if there's things that are happening that you're not really on board with. But then you have to be able to build the brand around So you can work on building a brand around while the formulation is coming through, but they both kind of have to come together so that you can have your initial run. But even if you have your initial run just sitting on the shelf and you don't know who it's going out to, you're fucked.
Yeah.
Right? You're fucked. So let's talk a little bit about, well, you tell me. Okay, you tell me. What do you think you would like to see it go out to for this first, for this, let's call it this first 3 months? What would you like the brand to be? Was that?
Who I want to target?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be more in the keto vein because it is a keto. I'm focused on hitting the right nutritional components to be keto. It's not going to be vegan. It has collagen in it, so like really will fit the the keto market quite nicely, and the convenience side of it. People are already doing it on my surveys and stuff for product validation. People are making it themselves. Not very many people are buying a pre-made product because they're not happy with them. So I really think that focusing on whether it's the intermittent fasting or the keto, whoever's doing the bulletproof coffees, in the keto market, it is definitely keto. I don't want the brand to continue to be keto. I might prove myself wrong, because that's where I'm kind of sitting. Like initially I thought that's what it was going to be, but I like coffee better than I like being keto. I might eat a keto diet, but it's not where my passion is or where I want to focus my knowledge base or how. And then I'm like, well, I just want it to be in the market where it's going to grow the best.
So tell me something. If you compare this to soy milk, almond milk, what are some of the other ones that are out there? All of these nut milks that are coming out, and like
nut milk, it has nut milk in it. Yeah.
Oh, yours has nut milk in it?
Yeah, so it's keto. I mean, it has the fat. It has everything that a bulletproof coffee would have in it. So it has an alternative fat cacao butter instead of regular dairy cow butter. It has a cacao butter. It has collagen. It has the MCT oil, and then I've added coconut milk, so it lightens the coffee because a lot of these products on the market that are pre-made are thick and gross, and it's like that's part of the drinking experience, right? You want to enjoy it. You want to visually see the color of coffee that you're used to when you're putting your regular creamer in it. So this, the manufacturer likes the product because it is that lightener aspect of the creamer too. He's like, most of the products. Yeah. Because
if I just would, what I'm thinking is like there's a visual and sorry, I'm getting an unstable internet connection now for some reason. So if I start to cut out, let me know. But there's a visual and there's like a sensory piece to this that you're very conscious of, right? Like when you put exactly. So I think that the getting it out to the people that. I know when I put almond milk into coffee, for example, it doesn't really look that great, right? It whitens it, but it takes off. What I find, if I come down to like the real reason that a creamer exists, is to take off the edge of my coffee, right? It's like it takes the edge off of coffee, and almond milk will do that, but not as well as real milk, right? Real milk will do that, but not as well as cream, right? So and real cream will do that, but not as well as real cream with a hint of vanilla and a little bit of cinnamon, right? So there's this scale in terms of like how much edge does it actually take off of the coffee, and at what point does it turn into a frappuccino or something, right? And I think that there's also all of these other coffee products that there's the potential for it to be used to make them better, right? Like a frappuccino, homemade frappuccinos and things like that. And I think that if you focus on this keto market, right? The keto coffee people, maybe they're not getting that visceral experience of having the edge taken off properly. Maybe they're not having the experience of the creaminess, and maybe those are the things that you could really focus on, right? And it's a liquid as well, or it's a powder form.
That's the problem we're having, it was supposed to be a powder, but then the nutritional aspects get out of whack and it becomes unketo. So we're looking to be somewhere either a solid puck like that dissolves in the hot water, or more of like a paste, like a tube that you squeeze. It's like somewhere between a solid and a liquid.
You know what though? I kind of like the idea of. I mean, it depends on what the. God, the thing is, if it is that different, right? Because everything is either a liquid or a powder on the market that I've ever seen, right? And if you can get that same, the same dose, the same feel, and the same, dissolving factor in a completely different form factor, right? Like there's, what was it that I saw the other day? The toothpaste pills, right?
Yeah.
So it's like it looks like a mint, but it's actually toothpaste. And it's totally travel friendly. And you look at it, you're like, oh, well, that shit's cool, right?
Yeah, right.
That's awesome. If you could get it in like a pill form, so it's like, a 1, 2, 3 pill, right? So I can choose how many I want, and then it's like, maybe you're shaking it and it, rattles like a thing of Tic Tacs, and like, those are the types of form factors where it starts to become kind of interesting. Maybe the paste, I don't know. I mean, you're gonna have to think about the visuals on paste, right?
You broke up there.
Oh.
I'm going to.
You're gonna have to think about the visuals on paste, right?
Yeah.
Like, at what point does it become like a peanut butter, right?
Yeah, that's kind of the consistency now, like a nut butter, like a Justin's nut butter. I don't know if you've seen the individual almond butter packets. It's like that. It's like not staying stable at high temperatures. It becomes more of like icing, cake icing, or
And what does that look like when you put it into a hot cup of coffee?
Right. The goal is for just with a simple stir of the spoon that it combines nicely, because that's part of the keto problem. It separates and divides, and it looks like fat floating in your oil floating in your coffee. So we're getting to that point that we're right at that. We get it stable at high temperatures, but then it doesn't combine easily, so it's just finding the right combination. We're very close. Like this last one, if we put two packets, 2 sample pods in it, the combination was fine, but one didn't do it. So now we're like, okay, we have to play with the quantity of the actual serving size, and that changes the nutritional component, like changing one thing. So the paste doesn't look as pretty, right? Like it's squeezing it out. I didn't want to do the paste. I wanted it to be like a hockey puck, like smaller than a hockey puck, just like an individual, like an Alka-Seltzer almost, like where you just tear it and pop it, or come up with really cool containers that housed it, when that would be like the accessory products for it.
Like a Pez dispenser, right?
You got it, yeah. Like a woman pulls it out of her purse and it's cool, right? Her handbag.
Give me a second, because I've got a thing. Just give me 1 second. I'll grab it from next to my coffee machine. I want to show you something, so it kind of gives you an idea, all right? I had a coffee sitting there too. Forgot about it. So it's this. So
right,
and this one I got in, and then what it does is it's got like a little dispenser here, and when you do that, it pops out, right? So it depends on how solid it is and how quickly it's going to dissolve. I know that I had my best results with. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm losing you.
Oh, give me 1 second here. Just make sure that I'm on the right internet here. Oh, that's why. Okay, you might lose me for a second, but I'll be right back, all right? Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, is that better?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so it depends on how solid the piece is, right? Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
are we
You
dying?
are. Yeah, it's just going in and out there.
Okay, how is that now? Maybe it'll take a second, and I can just pause it and.
It's always good when you ask, right? But then
Of course, and then as soon as you start talking, it just wants to die.
yeah. So that I don't think we're gonna get it real solid because we just haven't gotten there. The problem is like we test batch it in high heat ovens and then shipping to Florida, like where I am right now, like over the summer, it just did not work. So it will never be as hard as that tic tac type of. It just won't. I don't think it'll work. We have to add too many unhealthy things to it for it to become that of a solid state.
And then you lose something when you turn it into a powder as well, right? So
right, it adds too many carbohydrates. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So if that's the case, then I would almost, people don't want to see something like, I don't know, it's nice when there's a new form factor, but they also don't want it to be like too crazy. Right? So there might be some power in having it so that it looks like a nut butter, right? Mm-hmm. So that it comes across but it has this magical property that you wouldn't expect, right? Where it's like you can scoop out a little thing and you pop it in your coffee and all of a sudden it's perfectly creamy, right? Like that would be the surprise.
Right.
And if you can have a surprise in the product the first time they see it, they're like, oh, well, shit, I didn't expect that. Then you've got something that is going to be visually interesting to people who live off of being visual. Right? Because that's what Instagram, like, it's on Instagram stories and Instagram pictures, it's all like, it's 100% people living off of being visual. Right? So it's that, and if they can have that combined with, and it tastes so creamy, and like I got this stuff, but I'm a huge fan, so I reached out to her, and I actually got all of you guys a discount code, so here's a discount code so you can go and try it, right? And then their 73 million followers end up getting a discount code, and then you've priced in the idea, so you have to price in the idea that it's going to go through distributors and go to a store, and it's going to, like, you have to, so all of that needs to be priced in, so you should have real good margin, selling it out of your own individual store, right? Okay. And the good news is that if you have people that are like, massive quantities of followers, that you can give them a discount code that then triggers an affiliate payback, so that maybe they're earning a 10% commission on all of the things, right? Yeah. And then it becomes, I'm not going to pay you for the post. Look what this person did. This person's raking in. They're drinking their morning coffee, right? And they're staying keto, and their 3 million followers are suddenly pumping 10 grand a month into their pocket, right? Don't you want to be one of those?
Right.
Instagram game is short. You're not going to last forever. You might as well get yourself some affiliate money while you're at it, and I'll pay affiliates for life on your people. Right, and at that point you get to have power over it, right?
Yeah, right. Leverage over, yes.
Exactly.
Sharing, yeah. And flip side of that is, would I ever need to take it to a Whole Foods? Is that necessary? I mean, I guess.
It's the difference between a $10 million brand and a $100 million brand, right?
Right.
It's like vitamin water sold for what, 1.2 billion or something like that. Like there's brands that just like they pop, and they go down a path to mass consumption, and that's what you actually want. Is you can think that the money is what you're after, but come on. Wouldn't it be nice to know that, like, you have a 5% market share on what makes people's coffee creamy?
Yeah.
Right? Wouldn't that be like, isn't that worth like putting a team around and moving out of, moving into that, into that level where you have a real brand and you've got a real business. If you don't want that, then fine. If you want to have a lifestyle brand, then cool. What do you actually want though? That's the question you have to ask yourself, is like, what do you actually want? Right?
Yeah, I don't think I won't say no to the brand, to the proper brand. It's just not understanding how to. I mean, I understand the overall concept of how to get there, but really picturing myself like, could it be that big?
It could be. I mean, look, you are. So here's just a real quick example. Okay, the biggest supermarket chain in Colombia is called Éxito. Mm-hmm. They're owned by one family that is out of Medellin. Okay, and that family has basically 2 or 3 contacts that you get a hold of, and you can present your product to.
Mm-hmm.
That's it, right? And then you got distribution in, I think they got 30 million people or 15 million people in I don't know how many millions of people are in Colombia. I lived there for 2 years and I did not learn nearly enough about that country. But they've got tens of millions of people in that country, and you would have this is a store that's like Éxito has captured not only the Kroger's but also the 7-Eleven, right? Like it's that type. They've got little tiny stores and they've got big stores. So I mean, you could one conversation with them and you can basically be the go-to name, right? So it's not that out of the realm.
Gotcha. That's I see. I don't even know that.
Yeah. And
that's unknown for me. Yeah.
So if you the question you have to ask yourself isn't can I do it? It's do I want to? Because you can do anything, right? There is space in the market to take this global and make it a juggernaut, and then maybe sell it to a large conglomerate so that you get that. There's Gary Vaynerchuk did an interview with a guy who started, I can't remember the name of it was like these healthy bars, and he grew that up to like $1 billion business, and ended up when they really needed to scale, they went and got private equity money, right? So they had private equity investors, and the thing is you don't have to know how to do all of that right now, right? You don't. You just have to know how to get to the next step. Right? You can. I can't even remember where this phrase came from, but I love it so much. It's like you can cross an entire country at night with nothing but headlights and a map. Right? The headlights help you see your next 250 feet, and the map is like where you're going, and you don't even have to check the map that often. Right? So don't worry about it. If it's more of like you have to have a heart-to-heart with yourself. And say, do I want to be a person that runs this type of a business? Right? Or do I want something that I push hard for 6 months, it makes me 150, 200 grand a year, I relax on it, and maybe I sell it at an 8x. Right? And then I got my retirement money, I got a little bit of fuck you money, right? So
yeah.
It comes down to who do you want to be and what is it that you want to do. Right? And what difference do you want to make in your own life, in the world, in the lives of the people around you? How do you want to spend the 24 hours a day you get on this planet?
Right.
Because it's a very different world when you are, flying to Hong Kong to have a meeting with the owner of their top grocery store so that you can potentially get, maybe Hong Kong and Singapore in one shot, or sold it off, I'm sitting on the beach. Maybe tomorrow I'll go to Morocco, right? They're very different lives.
Yeah.
And you have to figure out what life you want.
Right.
So, does that help you kind of so you can?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it does.
And I think either way, you're going to be at the same place in a year, right? It's you can put your head down and you can really focus on getting to $20,000 a month worth of revenue. $20,000 a month of profit or revenue?
Profit.
All right, cool. So if we're talking 20,000, let's get into that now, okay? Yeah. Let's get into what that looks like. Okay, what are your margins?
We don't know yet until we have the formulation down, right?
Ish?
It's
Ish?
not even a clue yet, which
Okay.
sucks. Yeah, I mean,
And you don't know scalability discounts, and you don't know, like, when you go from, doing
that
a...
because we don't know how many units are going to be per package, selling it like a 7-pack or a 21-day pack or a month supply, or, going to a tub. If it's, so much is up in the air until this formula, like you said, you have nothing until you have the formula. So,
So,
I
question
don't
for
know
you,
how much
because...
packaging is cost. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about... Because I think that, if you're trying to do too many things, that you can kind of lose the plot and not be able to get any of them done,
Yeah.
right? So, is there a form factor that you would be happy with? Like, for example, if you could replicate that it looks, that it has the consistency of a peanut butter, so that it can be in a jar or in a little tube,
Yeah.
right? Would that be, is that an easy place to get to? Have you got there before?
That's probably the easiest and quickest way to get there. Getting it to a solid is going to be harder. Like we're pretty close with it being something that is of like an icing consistency, a thick icing consistency, not as heavy and dense as a peanut butter, but in between there. Yeah.
Okay, so we're looking like a Duncan Hines type consistency, right? All right,
Yeah.
I can dig that because that Duncan Hines feel. It's like they're. You should go back and look at some of their ads from the '90s, right?
Yeah.
And just see what they were doing visually, because if you can get to that consistency, if you can talk to your formulator and say, all right, I do not want to fuck around anymore, I need to get this out to market, and I know that there's a consistency that will work, get it to the Duncan Hines icing consistency and have it ready for me in 2 weeks so that I can at least test it, and I can start testing it with other people, because I can build a brand around a certain type of consistency. And maybe that's version 1, and maybe version 2 is when you have another $1 million to dump into research and you come
Right.
up with something completely revolutionary, but you're not there yet. You're not going to be able to dump $1 million into that.
No. And also, you take the fat out of it. I mean, the next creamer doesn't have to be keto. It can be just an allergy-friendly, dairy-free, and it could change the way that the format is completely, because right now we're dealing with a fat that is not stable at different temperatures. So, yeah, I think that's a great idea. Is going with the actual icing consistency, because that's what I keep saying in my mind. I'm like, it looks like icing, but you're right, Duncan Hines, it was like the visual of it spreading on the cake, and
Yeah,
take a taste of it. Yeah. Because
exactly.
I'm afraid of it squeezing out of the tube and it looking like shit, like I'm like, I don't want to eat that. You want it to be like, again, that visual appealing, so
Well,
the consistency of icing would be good.
yeah, it could also be like this ritual thing where maybe it's like, I mean, imagine, everyone has these little coffee things where you put the pods in, or some people use the French press, or there's so many different ways that you can do it. But I mean, imagine if the ritual of your creamer is, instead of putting it in after, you put it in before. Right?
Yeah.
And maybe that's like a thing where, like, you take you have the cup, and then you have hold on a second, there we go. You have the spoon, and then you like smear it around, and then you put the coffee in, and the coffee bubbles up nice and creamy, like right off the bat, right? And you're pouring a creamed coffee,
Yeah.
right? That could be a thing, right? Is there a way that you could make it so that it will fit, so that it will work as a cappuccino? I don't know. I mean, but you're going to have to play with this. But to play with it, you have to decide on what the hell's the consistency. Because once you know what the consistency is, then you can build a brand around that,
Yeah.
right?
And you make a really good point, because I was so focused on the travel component and it being individual serving. It might be more cost effective. Like if you did it in a glass jar that was scoopable.
Oh, and a glass jar would be so great. I mean, like, people love the idea of, upcycled glass type, you could totally play with that idea. And then you could have like a little jar, right? You could have like a baby food jar, right? And you could have the Costco size jar, and you can have, if it's like that, that's cool, right?
That's cool.
That's a cool product. And if you think about what's happening right now with brands, is what's this lady who's all about throwing all of your stuff out and then minimalizing your life? She's got like a Netflix series.
Marie Kondo, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So what happens is like, is she the one who organizes celebrities' pantries so that they look pretty, right? So that you color code your, I don't know, beans, right? And if you could have something that looks good on the shelf,
yeah.
right? If you can have something that it fits next to the coffee setup and ritual, right? It's not a thing that you keep in the fridge, it's a thing that you keep next to the coffee, right? And it's pretty. Because it's pretty and it's cool and it's, it becomes a part of the set. And I think that like that is, like I said, you can't please everybody all the time, and I would never buy something that is an individual use, because while I travel a lot, I stay in Airbnbs, right? Mm-hmm. These guys got a Nespresso machine, so I go down to the store and I buy the Nespresso pods. And I, go and get mine's just milk right now, right? Mm-hmm. So, but I would buy a jar of something because I don't want to, I already feel bad about throwing out the Nespresso pods, right? Right. What I did in my last place was I had they had a Keurig, and I had one of those refillable Keurig filters so that I could just put the coffee directly into it. That was my last solution. So like everywhere I go, I have to find a new solution anyways. But if I had like that one thing which was like a consistent creamer and it's just a jar that I keep there, awesome, right? Goes next to the peanut butter.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That was I'm gonna email my man. I was just messaging him today, but I think if we could just fine tune that, and maybe just shifting my perspective, it doesn't have to be individual serve, like you're saying, it may helping me see the big picture of the potential of where it could go, or looking a little different. Yeah. Maybe
you launch single serve in 2023.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, whatever. But this comes down to what's your vision. And what I would like you to do is to actually really write down how you want to spend your days a year from now, 5 years from now. Because a year from now, you should be spending like 60 hours a week working, right? Mm-hmm. But is that so that you can continue to spend 60 hours a week working 5 years from now? Or is it so that you can go and work 2 hours a week or 0 hours a week or on a completely new project 5 years from now? Right? That's where, start to think long term, because when you have clarity on the long term, it becomes real easy to know how you're going to spend your day tomorrow.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So I think, are there any, I'm just wondering if there's any gaps that we're missing here.
No, I'm just the crux of the name is the biggest thing, so I can at least move forward on setting up Instagram pages and start getting some ideas of logos and things like that. And then, but the formulation, that was brilliant. Just trying to go with what is the path of least resistance at this point to get it to market.
So yeah. I'm recording my screen right now. I'm going to just go in and check a couple things real quick here. Thesaurus.com. All right. So on thesaurus.com, we go for mate. Let's see what we got. This is one of my favorite things to do. So we've got
here so much.
What's that?
I've been on this page so much lately.
Chum. We have buddy. I mean that one's pretty obvious. Comrade. That's a little that's a little Russian. Crony. That's not good. We got helper. Intimate. No, that's bad. Coffee twin. Alter ego. Alter ego's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Oh man, imagine if it was just called Alter Ego Coffee Accessories. Something like that, where it was just a totally, it's, I don't know. I mean, that kind of jumped out at me.
Yeah.
Right?
That's cool.
It would just be like a cool name, like Alter Ego Coffee Accessories, right? Or like, what's that?
Coffee Co.
Yeah, Alter Ego Coffee Co. Right? We take your coffee. You know, I don't know. You can play around with that concept too, right?
Yeah.
We can go with antonyms. We got stranger, opponent, antagonist. Nah, we want to go with like amigo. So with amigo, we have ally, sidekick. Those are all a little cheesy. Assistants. Okay, so for an assistant, we have the backer, we have the companion, we have the patron, we have the temp.
Well, I don't know why I'm so stuck. I think I have the whole, when I was watching the module, the Frank body, how Greta goes over like how her sister came up with Frank body, and I get this freaking Joe stuck in my head, and I don't know if it's over. It's like the biggest slang, recognizable universal slang word for coffee, right? But I've even thought of Joe's mate. You know, you're kind of like Joe has, you know, like you already said, but I'm stuck there. You know, like I can't get away from that.
What about Alter Ego Joe?
Yeah.
And then I mean, look, there's a brand in Canada that I think it's called.
Joe. I'm just.
What's that?
My brain. It doesn't have to be Joe. That's what I'm just telling you. Like my brain is stuck there.
But okay, here's the thing: is that's not a bad thing, right? I went through 5 different iterations, I believe, before I came up with the Find Leverage. Right? Like I bought a findingleverage.com and Leverage the World and all of these, because what I was stuck on was this Archimedes quote, right? Give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it and I shall move the world, right? And I got stuck on that idea. And I was just like fascinated with it, and I was like, all right, that's what I can do for the world with this brand, right? And so I tried to find so many different ways, and it turns out that it's like 8 letters is the whole name. Right? So I have an 8-letter URL, I have an 8-letter Twitter, I have an 8-letter Instagram, I have an 8-letter, I haven't used any of them yet, but they're all just sitting there, ready to be launched. And it became like, you know, it just clicked when it happened, right? Because I was not, I knew the idea was there, I was not pleased with the execution and having found the way around it until I found it, right? So the idea that you're stuck on Joe, shit, that's a cool name. Stuck on Joe. Right? I mean, if you can play with that, and you can come up with something, right? Then, you know, this alter ego Joe, or, you know, whatever. It's like you can, if you can find the way that the word Joe makes it work, right? So there's a brand in Canada called Joe Fresh, right? And that is it's a clothing line, right? And they actually started as like a clothing line inside of the equivalent of Walmart. So like, you know how Walmart has like the George line? Yeah, well we did the ripoff in Canada and called it Joe Fresh. And it was so popular because it was just like this minimalist, clean, well-made clothing that now they've got their own stores, right? But, you know, Joe is a word that, like, you know, you think of, right? When you think of coffee. And so, I mean, Hot Joe, right? Like, but
I know, I've thought of everything.
But here's what I would say is that stay away from things like keto, stay away from things like travel, stay away from things like, you know what you could call it? Joe Butter.
Joe Butter.
Right?
Yeah. I thought icing too. We were going down that route. Like, what is a cake? What's an analogy for a cake? Like icing on the cake, icing on the coffee, or
that could work. I mean, but the thing is, icing. The problem with icing is it's inherently like a sweet.
Yeah, that's
right.
True.
So it is inherently sweet.
What did you say, Joe Butter?
Joe Butter. Yeah.
Kind of like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's. You know, it might have the consistency of icing, but it's still going to come in like the peanut butter jar, right?
So here's the thing that I'm running into with Europeans is that it has a sexual connotation with this. With the biggest drawback, like all of the Americans or North Americans say like the cosmic creamer, like you even voted cosmic creamer, and all the Europeans were like, that sounds like so, like they don't like cream in the.
Oh yeah, no, I would look. The problem is that you know.
Creamer, yeah.
Creamer, yeah, like it can have a bad connotation, right?
And then like butter, like there's just like.
Yeah, no, I remember once my mom, she was a school librarian, and she was looking up pumpkins online, and apparently there's a porn star called Penelope Pumpkins. And it just, so you have to be careful with that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, I think Joe Butter has, there might be something there, right?
Yeah.
Play around with it, think about what the other, because everything's a nut butter nowadays, right? There's sunflower seed butter, there's peanut butter, but then you have the outlier, which has become ridiculously popular, which is Nutella.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And Nutella is like, they call it a hazelnut spread, right? So Joe spread. I don't know, like that sounds even worse.
And I'm hesitant, like not using Joe and cream together.
Yeah, well that could be and honestly, okay, so here's where I'm at, is that Coffee Mate never refers to itself as a creamer.
No, and I
right?
like that. Yeah.
They refer to themselves as a coffee whitener.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because creamer has the idea that there's cream in it.
Yep.
Right? And, the Coffee Mates are always they're a coffee whitener, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's, there may be something to take from that.
Yeah.
Right? Where you can straight up rob them of that term in your descriptions.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The new age of coffee whiteners has arrived. Joe Butter, right? Like then it fits, because on the website on Find LVRG, if you go under the lens link, there's like a series of like 8 videos there, right? And the last one talks about how skyscrapers exist because there was a rivalry between Chicago and New York. Right? Rivalry builds greatness on both sides. Now, there's this book called The 48 Laws of Power, and it talks about the power of having an enemy, right? And that it really builds you up if you have someone, and it will build your army up, and it will build you, if you have someone to fight against, right? Mm-hmm. So if you decide from the very get-go, fuck it, I'm taking down Coffee Mate, right? I'm gonna take down Coffee Mate. That's my target. I got my eyes on you, and like your very first post is Coffee Mate, we're coming for you, right?
Yeah.
Then you get some insane leverage in terms of like people gonna be like, oh, it's on, and you're gonna have people memeing you, and like, so if you can steal their term where it's like coffee whitener, right? Mm-hmm. And you use it in a completely different aspect where it's like this icing consistency, and it's like Joe Butter. You could get acquired by them in like 18 months for a ridiculous amount if you really start gaining traction, right?
Very good point. Yeah.
So here's a really interesting story. McDonald's, when Chipotle had, I want to say less than 10 stores, maybe less than 20 stores. McDonald's bought like 10% stake in them and put a couple of people on their board and basically groomed them for massive expansion. Mm-hmm. And then once they went public, McDonald's sold off their shares, made a ton of money off of it. It was a very smart decision for McDonald's, but it would have been smarter if they held on to it for the long term. But Chipotle grew because of McDonald's. And that's a story that almost nobody knows, right? Because McDonald's can't put their brand on that. Mm-hmm. Right? You can't say Chipotle sponsored by McDonald's, because people would go running away, because what the fuck does McDonald's do with Chipotle, right? They're completely incongruent brands, but there are some similarities there. Mm-hmm. Right? And what you can do is, maybe that's a path forward for you, where you look for you're willing to sell a stake into somebody. And if I just want you to consider this long-term stuff once again. If you decide you want to sit on the beach and scratch your belly button, cool, right? But if you do decide you want to make it big and potentially have yourself a, 8-figure exit, 9-figure exit, all right, cool, right? Either way, it's not wrong, right? Did you hear?
Yeah, if I want to make the real money.
Yeah, exactly. So, there's the opportunity for you to bring the right people onto your board at the right time, but you're going to have to make a splash, right? And I like the idea of smacking coffee made across the face, right?
Yeah.
I think it's cool, and I think it would get some interesting traction, and I think you could play around with that. And I like the idea of Joe Butter. It's something that I see it and I understand it, right?
Yeah, because there's your mind immediately, like you said, icing goes to sweet, but butter goes to the richness and it has a different mind association. Yeah, and
exactly.
Butter, it's like
and at that point, you're not. I mean, you can go to the keto people, right? You sure can, and you can be like, "Yo, this is also keto friendly, by the way." But you should also be going towards just straight up coffee fans. And being like, it's next generation whitener, right? It's like Coffee Mate was the whitener for my mom's generation. This is for us, right? And then you can build an entire generational love around your brand.
Right. Okay.
That makes sense?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
Rock on.
How did you find the call?
Awesome.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think you're awesome. I immediately got just your posts and your knowledge and your directness and your confidence in your, replies builds confidence in, in the reader or the student who's learning. So yeah, I really appreciate your knowledge and your approach. So
good.
Enthusiasm.
Well, and my what?
And your enthusiasm.
Well, much appreciated. I had a great time. I can't wait to be able to walk by the grocery store one day and see, I don't know if it's going to be called Joe Butter, but if it is, I'm going to be like, all right, I'm going to buy some of that. I should have some sent to me for free, but I'll buy it. I'll buy it. It's all good.
You will once it gets to that point, for sure.
Perfect. When you have your international launch party on a yacht in Monaco, then you can invite me.
You're there.
Yeah, fly me in a helicopter, right?
Definitely. Won't be forgotten, for sure.
Awesome. Well, look, keep me up to date. All right.
I will.
Yeah. Let me know what's happening. Let me know, and if you need a little quick update or if you run into anything big, don't hesitate to ask me a question. All right.
Thanks. If there's anything vice versa, if there's anything I can do to support you and your goals, let me know.
Much appreciated. Well, the thing that this is about is that a lot of people don't understand what a leverage call is, right? So I'm glad that you accepted the fact that we're going to be recording this and that I'm going to be sharing this with a lot of people. So, the sharing of this is what you're doing for me. Right?
Yeah.
The allowing me to, share your story with the world and let them see the power that you can have in a single, hour. We're an hour and 8 minutes in right now, and I'm probably going to cut 4 minutes out of this when I went and got the coffee and the internet died. Right? I might not, but we're like an hour and 8 minutes into it right now, and there's a lot that can come out of a small amount of time.
Absolutely, definitely got my brain thinking more in the right direction. I mean, not just the right direction, but the path of least resistance. Like I said, what do you got and where can you go in the easiest, quickest way? So it was definitely good.
Awesome.
Just redirected thought. Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks, Greta. Have yourself a great day, and we'll probably see each other in the forum.
Yeah.
All right.
Cheers.
Thanks. Bye.